Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being
here.
Good topic for you today. Let's do it. People who explore abandoned places. What's the creepiest thing you've ever seen? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts.
And subscribe.
Even though no one is going to believe this, I want to share it. It was an abandoned house in Kosovo. The rumors say that the owners were killed and their souls still roam the house, the normal stuff. And my friends at the age of 11, 11, we went into that house. It was on a mountain. I don't know where it was. We went in there to see the fireplace was on. I'm kind of a nature guy, so I immediately noticed that it was put on just a few minutes ago when we had not arrived yet. We found some papers with pentagrams and some papers with Latin words as well. There wasn't an attic or basement, just a one-floor building. Suddenly, we heard something that sounded like footsteps. The house had no roof. I immediately go to check out who it was, and nothing, literally nothing. We look around the house, and again, nothing. We had 2 dogs with us, and we tied them up outside. Just as we were staying peacefully, our 2 dogs barked. We looked outside, and the corner of my eye saw a shadow. My friend saw it too. We thought it was an animal. Fast forward to an hour later, all of us were sleeping. Even the dogs too, until we all woke up to what sounded like pounding on the wall. We went to check it out, and there was nothing. A friend we left inside was there, and he swore he had heard and seen something. We didn't believe him, so we made some tea and ate stuff until I went outside and gave the dogs some food. I saw something looking at us from below. It wasn't an animal. It was completely black. I rushed inside and told the friends what I saw. I went outside and didn't see it at that spot. I looked around and saw it. It was closer. I called my friends to come see it, and they all saw what I saw. A completely black figure. We packed our stuff and left in a rush. My town used to be an army base during the war. It was shut down a little after the war, and they left the buildings there. They left the buildings and built a town on it. People live there and occasionally explore the buildings. One day I went with a bunch of friends, and we found an abandoned hospital that migrant workers use when they are helping with the farms. So we go in the building, and there's a horrific smell. We wander around and find no toilets. A few hours later, we were there for hours, we hear screaming. Now, normally the doors are locked unless the migrant workers are there. We got in through a window and could barely fit. Nobody else could have gotten in, as the window is always blocked by something. We tried to find the source, but when we came close, we realized it was in the wall. We figured it was just a pipe and moved on. We went to the roof because my gut is telling me something's going to happen. In the morning, everyone wakes up, and I must have dozed off because Jay was missing. We hear more screaming, and we run to it because it might be him. It's in another wall. He stopped screaming because we broke the wall and pulled him out. There was a box that we couldn't open next to him. He said he woke up and something was dragging him. As we're heading for the exit, he sees it again and points it out to us. I can only describe it as a demon wearing camouflage, and we ran to a door. I pulled out a crowbar and broke the door open. We never went back, we never forgot it, and we never discuss it. My friend and I used to go visit this abandoned farmhouse just outside of town. We had been there earlier this day and took some photos. We decided to go back there after nightfall. When we drove up on the house, my friend thought he saw a light in one of the windows, and I tried to calm him and said it was probably just a reflection from the headlights. So, we stopped for a little while in the yard, pointing the car's taillights at the house to see if we could see something strange. Nothing. We slowly walk up to the house. When we get up to the porch, my friend notices that the brick that was placed in front of the door to keep it from blowing open is missing. Panic struck him again, and I reassured him once again, saying we probably just forgot to put it back earlier. So I reached for the flashlights in the plastic bag we had with us to point it up toward the window 3 feet away, thinking we're just going to peep in to see if there's anything out of the ordinary. But there's a man standing in there, looking straight at me. My knees crumble to the ground as I fumble for words. Somebody's standing there. We run faster than we've ever back to the car. As we get to the car, my friend reaches for the keys, and the 3 or 4 seconds it took for him to unlock the doors seemed like an eternity, like a scene from a movie. We drove out of there, wheels burning. In the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, years ago at this point, a friend and I, who barely knew each other then, decided to go on a spontaneous road trip to an abandoned turnpike. It's real, it's out there, and it's definitely worth a visit if you're in the mood for a mild hike and easy trail through unique backdrop. But the relevant point to the post happened before we ever got there. Now, I've been in all sorts of abandoned places. The feeling of fear or danger usually only comes in perilously placed locations, such as open-air viaducts or things deep underground, where the possibility of harm is visible and environmentally obvious. I love a good story, but the feeling of the supernatural or some deranged killer is actually pretty absent in most of these locations. I'm more concerned about wildlife or security patrols. Anyway, we were driving through the mountain highways of Pennsylvania toward our destination when a big, beautiful, in the abandoned way house on a blind corner sped past us. I was already up the road. The speed limit was at least 50 on these crazy turns, but we both saw the same decrepit property, just feet from the road, but shrouded by the overgrown forest. When I could find a spot to turn around, we did, and quickly pulled onto the property. No one was home. Hell, by its appearance, no one had been in for quite some time. Peeking into the main house, we saw construction supplies and tools everywhere. Canvases were strewn, and although some of it looked new, it was an absolute mess, as if a renovation had commenced and then the crew had an absolute fit and left for good. The doors and windows were all bolted shut. We thought it was odd, but now that the prospect of recent visitors/owners were realistic, we decided not to try to enter. We circled around the house, and that's when I saw a structure that I still see in my sleep today. I'll say from the get-go that nothing terrible happened to us, but I will never forget this odd happenstance. We approached this near-collapsed gray wood barn. I use quotations because it was certainly not an idyllic barnyard. It was a slumping tower, with what looked to be a small coop or stable area haphazardly added on, and then abandoned mid-construction. I walked through the thin hay on the grounds. This was not big enough for any farm animal comfortably, and as I had said, the house was backed against the woods. We were in the boonies, but certainly not on a farm. I looked around a corner and into what, if it was at least 3 times larger, appeared to be a stable cell. A few beer bottles and food containers were discarded on the ground. A baby blanket with little cartoon circus animals was draped from just at my shoulder level and toward the ground. If whoever had lived here was home, we would be staring at each other. I turned to my friend, and she was wide-eyed and motioning for me to hurry up just from outside the structure. We got to my car and get moving quickly. She told me that she heard the clunking of an old truck or something moving along an unseen trail in the woods behind the house. It could have just been a back road, but if it was whoever frequented the property, we didn't want to be caught back this way. The rest of the day was enjoyable and nothing else crazy occurred. Bizarre considering we were hiking on an abandoned mountain highway. But I think the whole discovery of the homeless lean-to just never sat well with me. It was curious, it was sad, and it had the potential to be scary if we did run into whoever made it and they weren't interested in exchanging jokes. But I think what bothers me most about the whole thing is how I remember the exact same type of baby blanket in my room growing up. Funny how adorable little cartoon lions and elephants can take on a dash of the macabre, given enough time and context. Hey guys, again, no shoutouts today. This is my wife, Desiree. And just want to say hi. Another little behind the scenes of what happens. Sometimes she's sleeping next to me while I'm reading these stories. And other times she's trying to keep the kids away so that they don't make too much noise so you guys can enjoy.
And
anyway,
Batman.
Oh, and Batman.
You gotta keep Batman away.
So you'll see Batman again soon. He's waiting for us outside. So see you soon. Take care. At 19, when my two best friends and I were still hobbyist photographers and one of us was trying to start a vintage clothing business, we'd dress up and take pretend high-fashion pictures at this one abandoned house nearby. It was your quintessential creepy colonial home with a little boy's room, a little girl's room, and a parent's room that was well overgrown and had clearly been there a while. Each time we went, it was a little more broken down than the first time. Clearly other trespassers were coming in and breaking shit for kicks. Then one day there was a hole broken in the living room wall. Inside it was a staircase to a room we didn't know existed before. A few weeks passed by, and I took my friend's band there to take pictures of them. They were all dudes, so I felt a little more confident exploring. We went down the stairs in the wall, and it ended up being this kind of neat but creepy cobblestone cave. At the end of the cave was what appeared to be a little kid's room with a big decal of a cartoon tree and what appeared to be somewhat of a seance ring. No doors, no nothing, just stone cave into kid's room. I know that's not nearly as creepy as some of the things people have found, but the fact that it was just a hidden stair into a cave that led to a kid's room really makes me wonder what the heck that kid was living down there. An abandoned school in Kentucky. This school is on the property of a church that also has a house on the property. We went at night hoping the occupants of the house would be asleep. I went on 3 separate occasions. The first instance, the friend and I got scared, as the only entrance was around the back, and went into the basement. We left, as I didn't want to leave her alone. In the second instance, we brought 2 other friends. We made our way into the basement and began exploring. We found a hallway that led to a room with a single chair in the middle, which was kind of ominous. Upon going back, as that hallway was a dead end, we see that there was spray paint on the door, which said something along the lines of "Welcome." An overturned table that was passed had spray painting on the side, and we couldn't see the first time, that said, "This way to the fun," and had an arrow pointing to the right. Following the arrow, it pointed to a door. The door had previously contained a glass pane that took up about half of the door. This was knocked out. The door had hinges on both sides, so it would not open. Next to the door was more spray paint that said, "Watch your step," and there was a chair, providing a way to step through the broken windows in the door. I and one other went through. The others refused. This door led to a stairwell. The stairwell had tires that seemed to be held in place by rope or strings. Maybe some of the booby-trapped, we thought. I wanted to proceed up. My friends declined, and we left. Not into urbex, but did spend a week along a night on the main room of the old Granada Studios in Manchester. There's some most haunted video on YouTube somewhere that shows the exact yellow floodlight box that I mean. Anyway, I'm not a particularly superstitious dude, but when you're in a building that's haunted all alone, it'd be a shame to not see anything. So, using some of the rigger's chalk, sketch a Ouija board on the floor and park a flight case on it. Partially out of morbid curiosity and partially because it actually helped break the tension. If I heard a weird thud or groan as the building moved around, I would be able to shout at the flickering lights and watch as precisely nothing happened. So my dumbass is working away in the main studio, having a couple of beers and generally loving the fact that I'm getting to or paid for this shit. Nip out for a smoke on nights like 2 or 3. When security had closed up for the night, they've accidentally locked me in. No biggie. The building is old as balls and falling apart in places, but still has fire exits, so head down the dressing room corridor behind stage to loop back to the fire exit. This is the first time I start to feel uncomfortable. It's not just the shit lighting making the depressing 60s decor look even more stained and awful, or the constant drought running from the corridor causing doors to squeak and swing. 100% dead ass, there's something not right, and I'm feeling very sober very quickly, like someone's breathing cold air onto my eyeballs until I sharpen the up. I make it about 2/3 of the way along the corridor when the elevator right behind me at the end of the corridor groans, dings, and the door opens, and inside is what looks like a pile of rags with a wet rag top, or a woman with red hair crouching in the corner. Whatever it was, I'll never really know because you'd best believe I turned on the spot and beat my feet the f*** out of there. When I was younger, back before it was torn down, I'd constantly visit an abandoned nursing home not far from my house. I remember it being a rather large area with 2 places being particularly creepy. There was one room we'd go every time we'd explore, full of x-rays of what I can only assume were the heads of the elderly patients. They were just left there, scattered all over the floor of the room along with personal documents. My attention span never allowed me to read any of them long enough to understand, but I remember the very few I did read were just massive booklets of what appeared to be attendance lists. Could have also been appointment logs. There would also be a massive safe in the corner of the room that we could never open, that had just gone missing one of the times I came back. Next was a section that looked like a youth nursing home. It was the only part that threw me off when I first came to it, because it was so different from the rest of the place. It was covered in decorations that you'd expect to find in a child care center. It was so eerie to walk through, as pictures of disabled children still covered the walls, and name tags were still attached, still covered the walls, and name tags were still attached to the doors of each room. There was also a reception desk littered with personal papers similar to that of the ballroom, and worst of all, children's drawings scattered over the floor. It also, for whatever reason, had the darkest rooms of the nursing home and a draft that would occasionally slam the door that you'd enter from. Only when in there twice out of the 6 or so times I visited that place with different people and refused to go in afterwards. Just didn't feel right. So I grew up in a relatively rural part of upstate New York. Out in the middle of nowhere, there was this abandoned cement factory that had been left to lie fallow for decades. It was a huge facility out in the middle of the woods. It had its own living space, officers, generator building, and rock crusher. Both were massive pieces of equipment in a hangar-sized room, and underground tunnels. On top of that, there were the silos, maybe 10 or 15 stories tall, with corrugated metal stairs that take you all the way to the top. Anyway, we would explore these tunnels from time to time, and one day we found a room at the bottom of one of the silos. It was completely dark, maybe about the size of a small bedroom, and a square with what could be only described as a 3-foot wide floor-level moat filled with brackish water that went down the slide The water was almost perfectly at floor level moat, so if you didn't use a flashlight or watch where you were going, it would have been incredibly easy to fall into it. In the center of the room was a box maybe 7 feet long by 3 feet wide and maybe 4 feet tall. The goddamn thing looked like a casket. This room was the creepiest place I've ever been in. Perfectly silent. Weird moat, no light. Don't get me wrong, as a teenager, I thought it was the coolest place ever. But if I were writing a horror novel about an entombed vampire escaping his prison, this is where I would start. Sadly, the facility is no longer easily accessible these days. There's private security, and I think it's being used as a repair site for Amtrak trains that pass through. It's kind of a pity. I loved those places. I have very kind, fond memories of climbing to the top of the silos and just watching the stars. I feel like every kid needs a place like that. Not me, but my brother. He went into the woods behind my house into this ravine. It's not too deep, but it's wide and flat on the bottom with kind of steep edges. Well, usually we mess around down there, but one day he and his friend went deep down in the ravine in a direction that we haven't explored. There was a lot of branches or side ravines to the ravine, so it was easy to get lost, but we mapped out the known parts of it day in our spare time and still hadn't explored to the end of the ravine yet. But he and his friend decided to go explore while I was at work. They walked through a place with tall ferns that looked like Jurassic Park. I've seen them. And that was pretty much the extent of our exploration. But he went a little further and into the side ravine, and they walked up upon this huge old brick house with courtyard directly facing them with no roads going out, filled with weeds growing in the apartment, and on the pavement of the courtyard, smashed out windows, a torn roof, and doors still standing strong, but the handle was gone. He took a video while we walked in, and the house was almost completely empty with a concrete base that you could see under the floorboards that were smashed in. He didn't find much in the house, but it looked crazy, like some millionaire built a mansion in our woods and forgot about it. We never looked into it much, as it would sound crazy. Confirm it for myself. I went there myself one day, and before we walked into the courtyard, we saw the pile of rubble, and the house was crumbled, and nothing more there. We dug around a little and different. I didn't find much again, but while we were there, I swear to God, the birds were going ape crazy and tweeting nonstop all around us. We were going through the rubble until we eventually worked up the nerve to go to the tree line, which was a long while later because by then 14-year-old badass me and 12-year-old brother and his friend were terrified. Nothing much prepared after that except us getting lost on the way back. We never went back there. Our public school, Argentina. This school has 2 floors, but the second is really high. This school is 110 years old by now, a really old building. And this happened 5 years ago. Now, the second floor isn't just used that much because there are just some rooms filled with old stuff. One day, we had a new art teacher that wanted to go explore the second floor, and we went with him. All the classes went everywhere through a long hallway to explore, and I and 3 friends saw through a window leading to a roof area where some normal guy, but really old stuff around. Once in there, it was amazing. We were on top of this big-ass school and everything seemed normal until I saw a really small window in that roof. The window was at the same level as my knees when I stood in front of it. It was a tiny, kind of weird, old-looking wooden window with an old painting on it. We were already in a place that shouldn't be, but I told my friends and I opened it. Inside was a pitch-black room with a bad smell. I asked for a friend to lend me his phone because he had a flash with the camera, so we couldn't see. I aim the flash, and with not too much vision, I see a really small wooden chair in a corner, like for a small child. Some stuff lying around that I could not get to see what it was, so I assumed it was some garbage, the wooden floor kind of rotten, and a creepy wooden door. The windows were too small for us to get in. Why only one chair? It was the most haunted-looking room, but no one knew what that room was or where it was.